Live from the local station, the 10 o'clock news starts now.
Two close races have voters on the edge of their seats at this hour. Ballots are still being counted all across the state. The races are too close to call that everybody's interested in. Republican Ron DeSantis holds a narrow lead over Democrat Andrew Gillum in the race for governor.
Same story in the Senate race. Republican Rick Scott edging out incumbent Democrat Bill Nelson, but with several counties still reporting final numbers, anything could happen. Despite a majority of the state being highlighted red behind us, representing counties where DeSantis is winning, Gillum has won Duval County, along with other counties where major state universities are located. If he wins Florida, Gillum will become the state's first black governor and the first Democratic candidate to move into the governor's mansion since 1998. Well, we have crews all across the county tonight waiting for races to be called locally, statewide, and nationally. Let's get straight to Stacey Spanos with a look at the biggest races closest to us and most talked about. Stacey.
Oh, thanks so much, Tom and Mary. It has certainly been a busy night here, and we are at the curve looking at some of the biggest races that everybody is talking about. Let's start over here first with the governor for Florida, and you talked about Ron DeSantis being in the lead. Take a look at those numbers. 3,992,000 versus 3,907,000 and change. This was predicted to be a very narrow race, and as you can see, that is playing out right now. 97% of the votes tallied so far. How much is this going to change? We'll have to wait and see. Is this going to go throughout the night and possibly into tomorrow? We'll have to see about that. Florida is kind of notorious for that, isn't it? Let's go here to the U.S. Senate race in the state of Florida. As you talked about, a neck-and-neck race. But right now, Rick Scott, the Republican, is edging out longtime incumbent Bill Nelson. 4,013,000 votes versus 3,949,000 votes, with 97% of the precincts reporting. I mean, this is unbelievable. And then we're looking at the governor's race in Georgia. This one not as tight as it's been in the Sunshine State. Brian Kemp, the Secretary of State in the Peach State, the Republican, is up 56% to Stacey Abrams, the Democrat, 43%. Now, keep in mind, this is with 40% of the precincts reporting, so this could sway throughout the night. We'll be watching it closely to bring you more of those numbers. Tom and Mary?
Thank you, Stacey. So if you have a phone or tablet nearby, put news4jax.com into your web browser, open the News4Jax app. You can view all the race results in Florida and Georgia listed in a drop-down menu. And of course, all the results will be scrolling at the bottom of your screen as well.
With us tonight, News4Jax anchor and political reporter Kent Justice, and our News4Jax political analyst Rick Mullaney, the director of the JU Public Policy Institute. Fascinating, isn't it?
We are having a good time watching this because a lot of the things have been too close to call. That makes it interesting. A lot of unexpected, especially when it comes to the amendments that overwhelmingly have passed here in the state of Florida. Except for one. And these too close to call races are really something.
It's stunning. Just last night, we did a preview of this election. We quoted a Quinnipiac poll that showed outside the margin of error, the winner would be Gillum and the winner would be Nelson. Right. And if you looked at the consensus polls, even the real Clear Politics averages, anybody looking at the polling would have to say the edge to Gillum and the edge to Nelson. Tonight's results are stunning. And in the big picture, for the Republicans, a big night. If in fact Scott holds on, a big boost in the Senate. It looks like the Republicans really do hold the Senate. Plus, they've defended in Tennessee. It looks like they've won Indiana. So it's been a stunning evening. It really has.
The Scott Nelson race, doesn't it look like the 2000 presidential race here in Florida all over again? That we're going to get down to a recount followed by a recount of the recount, maybe?
It is razor thin. There's no doubt about it. It's about 70,000 votes separating the two. I do think we've had some great improvements since 2000. However, for that recount, it'll be done much more quickly. There's an automatic, statutorily, there's an automatic recount if you're within a certain range, and they could very well hit that tonight.
It's fascinating.
Wow. Let's go live to Scott Johnson, who is in Orlando. Scott?
Well, everyone Tom here is excited, feeling that he may just pull this out despite the fact that this race is not officially called. He has maintained that 80 to 90,000 vote lead Ron DeSantis has over Andrew Gillum for the last hour or so. So there is excitement in the room. They are waiting here for it to be called. We're in Orlando at his watch party at the Rosen Center, and I'm joined now by the Northeast Florida Finance Chair, Kent Sturman. You're kind of part of Mr. DeSantis' inner circle. What's going on behind the scenes right now?
We feel really, really good at this point, Scott. The congressman is elated with the results so far, and he's working on some finishing touches to his speech upstairs, and I think he'll be down soon.
Do we feel this will be called soon?
I don't think it's my place to call it, but I think the numbers speak for themselves, and they look really, really encouraging right now.
And is he excited right now?
He's as excited as he can be. He's a pretty even-keel guy. But I think it's the fruition of a lot of hard work, and I think it's starting to come to realization that he's going to be our next governor.
Kent Sturman, thank you very much for your time. So that is the mood out here. They're feeling confident. This race is by certainly not called, but they're feeling confident. They have the numbers they need to win. We'll be standing by and waiting on the Mr. DeSantis to speak when he does. We're live in Orlando. Scott Johnson, Channel 4, the local station.
All right, thank you, Scott. And let's head over to Tallahassee now to Tarek Miner, who is with Andrew Gillum's camp. Tarek.
Live on the campus of FAMU, supporters are trying to remain optimistic. We just had a Gillum campaign spokesman not too long ago take the stage and talk about the rain. She said that back when Gillum was elected mayor, it rained very similarly to the way that it did tonight. Just trying to find some kind of irony, trying to keep the folks here excited and enthusiastic and optimistic about the possibility of Gillum being able to come from behind at this point. Radio announcer Tom Joyner also took the stage, asking them to get excited and clap. But you could just kind of feel in the room a bit of a deflation in the excitement and enthusiasm as compared to what we saw earlier in the night. I know a lot of folks still are counting on Broward County as the county that they're looking at, hoping that Broward County votes could possibly put Gillum back in the race. Just in the past few minutes on the stage behind me, though, we did see the stage crews beginning to bring out the teleprompter and bring out the actual podium for Mr. Gillum to speak. Of course, the candidates always prepare two speeches, typically, one an acceptance speech, the other a concession speech. I'll tell you what, the folks here in Tallahassee will be incredibly disappointed if Andrew Gillum does have to deliver that concession speech and concede tonight to Ron DeSantis. But it's still too close to call. It's still razor tight, but all indications are is that Ron DeSantis has the lead and that it would take something very special at this point for Andrew Gillum to pull out and actually bring it home here to Tallahassee. I'll toss it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Tarek,
Thank you, Tarek. Votes are still being counted around the state, but not here in Jacksonville. All of the Duval County ballots have been counted. Let's check in with Jim Pickett, who is covering the Supervisor of Elections office. Jim?
You know, Tom, an interesting development here. As all the precincts are in, as you had just said, the work is far from done. I just talked to Mike Hogan, the Supervisor of Elections. He says the canvassing board is getting ready to meet, I'd say in about 15 minutes, because races are so close. They really have to take a look at some of those ballots, the mail-in, the vote-by-mail ballots primarily, and also the military ballots, because they know statewide every vote is going to count, particularly in that Senate race. So they're getting work tonight to do that, getting ready to do that. In fact, I just talked to him. I want you to hear what he had to say, what's ahead of them.
These statewide races, a lot of the statewide races are very close, Jim, and so a few thousand votes here and there, you start going around all the 67 counties, that's a lot of votes. So not that we expect it'll change very much, but it could, and especially a very tight race. So we're going to continue to work. I'm not sure how long, maybe after midnight, but we'll do some more work tonight on the canvas with the canvassing board.
You're going to be looking at provisional ballots, other ballots
Probably
as well?
won't get to provisional ballots tonight, but we'll be looking at mail ballots that have to be duplicated. We got a bunch of military in late today, and of course, as you know, military can still be sending their ballots all the way through the 16th of November. They have 10 days after the election to get some of their stuff in. So there are a lot of votes out there still, and so we're going to stay the course and work on duplications, signature differences, that kind of thing.
This is all ringing a bell back before you were supervisor, when we really had to look at every vote, are you kind of concerned that that's going to be, since things are so close?
Well, because it's tight, it's best to go ahead and get that stuff out as quickly as you can. So that's what we're going to do.
Which is, I think, is a telltale sign, because normally about this time, these folks are going home. That's not going to be the case. The canvassing board is going to be meeting, and they, as you mentioned, till after midnight. And of course, we'll be here. We're live at the Election Center on the north side. Jim Piggott, Channel 4, the local station.
Thank you, Jim. And we want to go to the U.S. Senate race now. Rick Scott camp in Naples, where Janice Harris is. And Janice is standing by live. And Janice, boy, the candidate is ahead by 63,000 votes. That's it. Out of 8 million.
That's it, 63, absolutely. Out of 8 million, this is a very close race. Right now, it's a little quiet behind me, but if you ask anyone in this room, as far as they are concerned, Governor Rick Scott will be the next senator for the state of Florida. So, right now, it's still calm. We know that practically all of the numbers are in, 99% reporting, but this is still such a close race. Now, honestly, this is the first time I've heard it this quiet in this room, but I can tell you right now that Governor Rick Scott, his campaign camp, is wishing that they would call this really at this point, but we're going to wait until it's at 100%. But as you can see, Governor Rick Scott's supporters are watching the screen. They are waiting for it to say 100% is in. This has been a close race since numbers first started coming in after 7 o'clock. It's been a very exciting time in this room with his supporters. We'll see if he did enough, if he spent enough as far as his campaign, if he did enough while being governor to try to become the next senator for the state of Florida to win that seat. Mary?
Janice Harris reporting to us live. Thank you, Janice.
Now let's go to the Nelson camp in Orlando and Channel 4 reporter Vic Micolucci. Vic, are they getting nervous there?
That's true. I'm not sure how many of the ones that we've...
Tom, a little different mood here. Definitely a lot of nerves, a lot of anxiety as people are watching those numbers slip. Bill Nelson came off to an early lead. A lot of people were in here. They were rowdy. They were chanting. They were cheering. They were very excited. Now things have changed. The crowd has gotten a lot smaller. Now, to be fair, there are several different rooms. There's a large atrium. A lot of people are watching TV, watching the numbers come in outside there. So there's still a couple hundred people here. But it definitely does look like the crowd has thinned just a little bit. This is a very diverse crowd, people coming from all over to support Senator Bill Nelson. They think that he has their interest in mind. We see Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. We see a lot of LGBTQ community groups here. We also see Hispanic American groups, African American groups, just to name a few of the people represented who are hoping that not only Senator Bill Nelson keeps his seat, but also that Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum can take the lead, can win, and become the first African-American governor here in the state of Florida. That race also not looking that good for the Democrats. Again, it is just one of the rooms here that I'm standing in. So there are a lot of people in these overflow rooms in the atrium of the Embassy Suites Hotel. We have not seen Senator Bill Nelson all day, though. We saw him yesterday. He was at some of the major intersections in Central Florida, waving signs, meeting with voters, making that last-minute push to get their approval. Today, we haven't seen him. In fact, I called his campaign staffers several different times. They told me they weren't aware of any public appearances. So he is laying low, relatively. He's with his family members, with some very close friends, as he watches these numbers come in. Behind me, the podium where he is expected to address his supporters. We have not seen any activity there in quite some time. Might not be the best sign, but again, people are holding on to hope. It is not over until it's officially over. We're live in Orlando. I'm Vic Micolucci, Channel 4, the local station.
And with 98% of the votes in, 2% still have to be counted before it will be over, if it is in fact over then.
You want to stay with us? There is something else to talk about tonight, the weather. John Gahn will be up in a moment. We'll be right back.
Weather Authority's Exact Track radar. Count on precision storm tracking and street-by-street views when severe weather hits your neighborhood.
All right, folks, picking up some bad weather in Georgia. We'll look at that in a moment. But for everybody, the heat was on. 88 degrees here this afternoon, busted the old record by 2 degrees. And again, the heat was the big weather story here today, and it's going to remain that way over the next day or two. Where are all the nasty storms? Well, you can see them back out there near Valdosta. Some very intense storms right now. Some of these could go severe in the next half hour. As I see that clustering of lightning, that's always a bad sign. But these will continue to travel eastward, go over 84. And again, this is for Homerville and Argyle. These are locations in Georgia that will likely see some very intense storms. There could even be some small hail as it crosses right over 84. You can see that little purple area right in there, as that's where the potential of this storm going severe. This will continue to move eastward. It'll stay in South Georgia. I do not see it impacting Jacksonville, but if you live in South Georgia, next 2 to 3 hours could be a little busy for you folks. Here in downtown Jackson, we actually see the lightning from that storm if you were out and looking around. But tonight, locally, well, what an amazing evening. Current temperatures are basically holding in the 70s, and they're not going to go down by much more. So a really pretty night. So that means a really pretty start to your Wednesday. Again, the daytime temperatures are going to head higher here. 85 plus in Jacksonville down towards St. Augustine. You see the daytime temperatures reaching out in the low 80s. And again, the big story, near record heat for tomorrow. The record for tomorrow is 87 degrees. We start off at 70, head right up into the mid 80s. That's a lunch hour. You know, with the sun going down so early because we're on standard time, the heat of the day is right around 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we can expect those temperatures to be in the mid 80s then. But even as we see sundown, temperatures will still be close to the 80-degree mark. No major rains expected here tomorrow. It looks like tonight's rains in Georgia will be the biggest rains we'll see probably until sometime late Thursday, maybe Friday. There's a graph, the hump at that, right around 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's where we'll see the heat of the afternoon. And here's the extended forecast, and you can see, first, it's all heat all the time coming up here the next 3 or 4 days. This will get you through Friday. But on Saturday, cool front comes down the coast, clouds roll in, and Saturday is not looking great. We will pick up a few showers on Thursday and Friday, but those showers should be pretty brief, not looking for major rains. And then there's next week, and then late next week, we're going to see those temperatures really take a slide. We'll look at those coming up here in a few minutes. One reminder, driving around town tomorrow, tune into V101.5. And again, we'll have more on the forecast there on the radio. I want to go back real quick. I'm going to show you that the temperatures coming up here next week are going to be really cold. We could actually see some temperatures in the freezing range, and I'll have more on that again around 10:40.
All right, thank you, John. Having difficulty with my chair here, but we do have some new some updates for you. The Associated Press has just called Amendment 7 passed. That's the first responder and military member survivor benefits in public colleges and universities. Right. That has passed.
That was one of those things that was bundled as well, as we were talking about some of the amendments and things that have been put together. But on the face of it, you see benefits to survivors, first responders, and these sorts of things that you say, well, that's a good idea. One of the other things that we're just hearing about is a congressional race, as we talk about balance of power. In Southeast Florida, we found out that...
Southeast Georgia.
You know what? I should say Southeast Georgia.
I'm just helping you out here.
Yeah. U.S. Representative Buddy Carter has been reelected. I talked to him yesterday, last Friday, just about the race. And this was one of those races that we saw in Georgia, which is a red state, a Republican state, where he said, I've had to run this race in a different way than I ever have before, because it was that referendum on what's happened in presidential politics and in federal politics. And so it was one of those things where, yeah, he said it was just different, that things out of his control were the things that were going to guide the race. But Buddy Carter reelected tonight as U.S. Representative in Southeast Georgia, District 1.
Well, stay with us. We continue our coverage on this election night when we come back. And welcome back to our election night coverage. We are taking a closer look at the governor's race here in Florida, which is still so close.
We think it's 83,000 right now, with DeSantis holding a larger lead than he was about a half an hour ago over Andrew Gillum.
And let's go to Joy, who is standing by to give us a county-by-county look at this race. Joy.
Yes, Tom, Mary, it's larger, not by much. Take a look. 98% of the precincts reporting overall in Florida, and this is the margin. Ron DeSantis at 49.9%, Andrew Gillum at 48.9%, 1% difference. Let's take a look at our area and see how many of you voted. Let's zoom in on this map, and we'll be able to take a look here in Duval County at the numbers. With all of the precincts reporting, here's the margin in Duval County. Andrew Gillum, considerable lead there, 51% to Ron DeSantis' 47%. Clay County, we're going to take a look at next. Clay County's numbers are showing, take a look, 69% for Ron DeSantis, Andrew Gillum's 29%. And in St. Johns County, let's take a look at that. We have quite the margin here. Ron DeSantis, 63, almost 64%, to Andrew Gillum's 35%. We're going to move down the state and take a look at that all-important I-4 corridor area, just to take a look at some of the major counties that are in this area. I mentioned before that Hillsborough, the Tampa area, as well as Orange, that's where Orlando is. Those two counties alone hold 43% of all of the Florida voters, the registered voters. So let's take a look at Orange County here and see how they voted. You can see it's blue for Andrew Gillum, but looking at the margin here, 62% to Ron DeSantis is 36%. And very quickly, we'll look at the Tampa area, Hillsborough, and that is showing much slimmer margin, but still Andrew Gillum ahead, 53%, 45%. Tom, Mary, back to you.
All right, thank you, Joy.
We continue to follow developments in Washington, where reports are, even though not all the votes have been counted, it appears that the Democrats will take control of the House, and it appears the Republicans will hold on to control of the Senate. The exact numbers not apparent yet and may not be apparent until early tomorrow morning. Now, in addition to electing a governor and a United States senator, Floridians have 3 other statewide offices that they are deciding tonight. The Attorney General's race has been decided. Ashley Moody is the winner. She defeated Sean Shaw 52% to 46%.
And now in the race for Florida Chief Financial Officer, Jimmy Patronis is still ahead of Jeremy Ring. This is 52% to Ring's 48%, and it's with 98% reporting in.
The race for Agriculture Commissioner has been as close as the race for United States Senate. 50% for Nikki Fried, 50% for Matt Caldwell, and as you can see, 98% of the votes have been counted. This, too, may wind up being a recount. We'll just have to wait and see. I think we're going to take a break right now and continue our coverage when we come back.
Stay with us. And welcome back to our coverage, election night coverage. We want to take another look at the race for governor. Right now in the state of Florida, oh my goodness, it's still tight. But Ron DeSantis with 50% over Andrew Gillum's 49%.
And if that's not tight enough for you, how about the race for United States Senate here in Florida? That one has been at 50-50 for the past couple of hours. 99% of the votes are in. There's a sense of jubilation at Rick Scott headquarters. There is sort of a solemn atmosphere at Bill Nelson headquarters, but again, it's not over. Nobody has declared victory and nobody has conceded defeat.
And now we want to go back to Kristen Holmes, who's in Washington tracking this balance of power tonight, the big races. And it looks like, Kristen, the GOP will hold on to the Senate.
That's absolutely right, Mary. This is where we are right now. We have just called Texas. It looked close for a while, but Republican Ted Cruz has maintained his seat. But not only that, that's not what had them keep the Senate. It is this seat in North Dakota. Heidi Heitkamp was the Democrat. She has now officially lost to Republican Representative Kevin Cramer. The math just not there. Once they lost 2 seats, it was an uphill battle already. They can't gain 4 seats. So the Senate is done. Republicans breathing easy. They can keep control of that. There were some concerns there. Now, we're still talking about the House here, so let's look at the House balance of power. We are down to 11 seats that Democrats need in order to take control of the House. That's down from 23 seats. It's looking good for Democrats. We're seeing a lot of those suburban areas that they were hoping to get, some of those suburban areas that really helped carry President Trump in 2016, turning blue, turning Democratic. Now, that's what the projection said, but everyone was a little bit cautious. We remember what happened in 2016. Conventional wisdom polls showed that Donald Trump could not win the presidency, and yet he defied that. So Democrats have been very careful with this. We had about 31 toss-up races. We are down to, let me count this, 28. Three of them have gone so far to Democrats, one to Republicans. So watching here very closely as these final races start to come in on the East Coast. But remember, we still have the entire West Coast. There are some races in California that might not even be called tonight if they are closed. Those polls don't close until 11 p.m. our time. And then after that, after they close, California has a law that you can mail in your ballot on Election Day. So if some of those races are still close, there's a chance we're not going to know for a couple of days there. But it is looking promising for Democrats as they work methodically, picking up these seats by pretty big margins. I do want to mention one thing. A lot of Pennsylvania pickup. We know this was a huge win for President Trump in 2016. Hillary campaigners, Hillary Clinton herself, thought they were going to win Pennsylvania. We've now seen about 3 pickups for Democrats by huge margins there. So that's something that looking towards 2020, and I know that we don't want to do that yet because we're not even done with 2018. But when you look at that, that's going to be something that Republicans and President Trump worry about because he really carried that state.
Kristen, when do you think you might be getting a tweet from President Trump about all of this? He's been quiet so far tonight, correct?
He has been quiet. We know he's watching all of these elections unfold at the White House with close friends and family. Melania Trump is there. Corey Lewandowski, his former campaign manager, there as well. But nothing just yet. Now, we know that they were kind of holding their breath, particularly when it came to Florida. Florida is a second home to President Trump. He is proud of the fact that he won that in the presidential election. And that was a big win for him. Another state that Hillary Clinton thought that she would win. So this is kind of something they might be waiting for that. I'm sure once we start seeing these projections, once it's made very clear the Senate is going to be held by Republicans, we'll probably hear from him.
Kristen Holmes reporting to us from Washington tonight. Kristen, thank you as always. Well, the race for governor of Georgia is being watched just as closely as Florida's race for governor.
It certainly is. Taking a look at the latest numbers in this race, Democrat Stacey Abrams holding on with 45%. Brian Kemp ahead with 54%. Ted Metz trailing. This is with 58% reporting in. So we still have a little bit of ways to go. Now we're checking in with both of the major candidates' election night events, and we begin with Doug Evans at the Stacey Abrams event in Atlanta. Doug.
Tom and Mary, good evening from Atlanta, where Democrat Stacey Abrams is vying to become the first female African-American governor elected in the entire United States. She is, as you said, facing Brian Kemp, who is currently the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia. You just read the numbers just a few minutes ago. Brian Kemp currently leading Stacey Abrams with 71% of the precincts reported, leading 55 to 43%. And yet here at Stacey Abrams' campaign party, they remain extremely hopeful. Congressman John Lewis, the civil rights icon from Atlanta, was on stage just a few minutes ago, encouraging this crowd to stay hopeful, saying that it was going to be a very long night, and indeed it could be a very long night. In fact, some key polling places stayed open by court order until 10 o'clock this evening. So they only closed a little more than a half an hour ago. That was in Fulton County, which is a key area for Stacey Abrams and where she is expected to do very well. Of course, millions of dollars have been poured into this race. The Democrats accusing the Republicans of voter suppression. Secretary of State Brian Kemp accusing the Democrats of hacking into the state's voter registration files. We do expect this to be a very long night, and we are here watching the votes coming in with the Abrams campaign. That's the very latest from Atlanta. I'm Doug Evans. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Doug.
The big takeaway there is that there are very important votes in those areas you just talked about that have not come in. And we know DeKalb County we talked about. I'm watching here, only 14% of their precincts are reporting so far. So a lot of these votes that you would expect to go toward Stacey Abrams for that governor spot in Georgia, they just haven't come in yet.
Let's go live now to Athens, Georgia, and to Brian Kemp watch party. And Claire Sims is covering that for us. Claire?
Hey, good evening, Tom and Mary. We are live at the Classic Center in Athens. This is the home of Secretary of State Brian Kemp, and he obviously has a lot of hometown cheerleaders here tonight as he awaits the election results. Now, Secretary of State Brian Kemp has not made an appearance here so far, but we have heard from several big name GOP people here in Georgia, including Senator David Perdue and Johnny Isakson, both of them supporting Brian Kemp in his endeavor to become Georgia's next governor. Now, you may remember that Georgia has had Republican governors for the past 20 years, and people here are hoping that this year is no exception. Of course, you heard from people at the Abrams campaign that they are hoping to turn the state for the first time in 2 decades. Now, we did just get an update on the election results, and Stacey Abrams is sort of narrowing the gap a little bit. But people here at the Kemp campaign say they know it's going to be a long night. Just have to with the president.
Our apologies, we can't hear Claire Sims very well. However, we can tell you that the race remains tight. Brian Kemp has 55% to Stacey Abrams 45%, but they still have a lot of votes to count. And again, we mentioned Fulton County not yet in.
And speaking of which, let's go to Joy, who's got that county-by-county breakdown on the Georgia governor's race. Joy.
That's right, Tom, Mary. We're taking a look right here. Tom, you talked about this already. Here's the margin. Looking at the entire state of Georgia, Brian Kemp at 55%, Stacey Abrams at 43%, but that's only with 61% of the precincts reporting. Let's take a look at that metro area, the Atlanta metro area, as I zoom in here to that northwestern part of Georgia. And here you see Fulton, DeKalb County. Let's take a look at what these numbers are showing us. DeKalb County, yeah, it doesn't, hold on one second. Let me hit this button again just to make sure we're getting these numbers coming in correctly. And there might be some discrepancy here, but right now our numbers are showing us Stacey Abrams is 78% with Brian Kemp's 19%, but I'm not getting a reading on the precincts, so that's why I'm questioning these numbers right now. I'm going to take a look at Fulton County for you quickly and see what the numbers are there. Atlanta basically split by the 2 counties. So let's take a look. Here we go. Fulton County has 37.5% of the precincts reporting. And here are the numbers we're looking at. 72% for Stacey Abrams, Brian Kemp at 26.5%. And I'm going to try DeKalb County one more time to see if I can maybe see if there's any precincts reporting here. Nope, not seeing it. But if we take a look at the entire metro area, the Atlanta metro area, that's right in here, you can see most of it is blue for Stacey Abrams. And Clark County, where you saw that report coming, where Brian Kemp, his watch party is right here. Clark County looks like it's blue here for Stacey Abrams. And no precincts are reporting here on this map, but we're looking at the margin. Stacey Abrams 64%, Brian Kemp's 34%. Tom, Mary?
And we're going to take a break from our coverage. We'll be right back. We are covering some other local news, including a story in Clay County where an Orange Park woman is in jail after she was arrested today and charged with child neglect, Clay County investigators say she failed to monitor a child that was found naked and filthy on a busy road this morning.
News 4 Jax reporter Eric Avanier has been following this story and explains why the outcome could have been a lot different.
Because certain details were omitted from the arrest report, it's unclear if the woman who was arrested was the child's mother. What is clear is that that little girl is very fortunate that a motorist saw her in the road and called 911. Clay County deputies say shortly after 9:30 Tuesday morning, they got a call from a motorist who found a little girl in the roadway of Polk Avenue. According to investigators, the little girl was naked, dirty, and covered in feces on her back. Deputies noted in their report that the child was located less than 200 feet from this intersection with Washington Avenue, which they say is a heavily trafficked thoroughfare. A nearby neighbor who is also a mother was horrified to hear of what happened.
And for her to be just running around with no supervision, and anything could have happened to her.
Deputies searched the area for an adult who was responsible for the child. They later located 32-year-old Jacqueline Walters and charged her with 1 count of child neglect. Parts of the arrest report are omitted, so it's unclear if Walters is the girl's mother. But the report clearly states that Walters failed to provide care, supervision, and maintain the child's mental and physical needs. I briefly spoke to a man who claimed to know the child's family. How did the child get out then?
I don't know.
2 other people who claimed to know the child's family did not want to talk to us about what they know. Instead, they told us we should not report what happened. Walters remains in the Clay County Jail awaiting a bond hearing. Reporting in Orange Park, Eric Avanier, Channel 4, the local station.
The Weather Authority's Exact Track Radar. Count on precision storm tracking and street-by-street views when severe weather hits your neighborhood.
All right, so today was a record breaker on so many different levels, but in terms of temperatures here today, this was pretty impressive. 88 degrees, November 6th, and we're popping near 90. The actual feel like today actually reached 91 degrees. So again, 88 today here in Jacksonville. The other record was out there in St. Simon's Island. They had a high of 85 degrees here today. This is all because we had a nice southerly wind. We had a lot of atmospheric lift, and that allowed for the temperatures to really pop. Where's the cold air? Well, look at the blue here. This is going to go out for a whole week, and we're going to go from this record heat that we're seeing today, probably even tomorrow, into a pattern in which the cold is going to get really, really close to Jacksonville. And this is going to be, as you wake up a week from tomorrow morning, 7 days from now, and you can see that blue, which is the freezing air that'll be across the eastern half of the United States. It'll be dripping down into South Georgia. So we could get our first freeze into Georgia, cold temperatures here into Jacksonville, but it'll be brief because this is the morning temperatures, not like the daytime highs or anything. So we'll have some cool temperatures to talk about as we get into the last half or the middle half of next week. Where are the storms here tonight? Well, you can see them right out there southwest of Waycross. Never went severe, but that was a very impressive storm, I should say, as it continues to move eastward right now. This is going to go just south of Waycross. The other showers we've been tracking, including some massive storms that were out there towards Tallahassee, have already faded away. So the point of it is that tonight's weather is all about Georgia seeing the storms. If you live in Jacksonville, if you look out to the north, you actually can see the lightning coming from the storm that's out there right over Homerville right now. This is going to go stretch out over the Okefenokee, which means that swamp's going to get filled up by rain, but also Argyle and places along 84, which are seeing the rains right now, will also see this storm produce some pretty good rains. Folkestone, you're over here on the edge. I think you're going to stay dry because this thing will break up over the next 2 hours. As you look at the big picture here in terms of temperatures, everybody's in the heat. Low 70s, nearly 11 o'clock at night, very rare in the latter half or even this beginning part of November. And as we get to the latter half of fall, that's even pretty rare in itself. So right now, beautiful night in Jacksonville. As you wake up tomorrow morning, you're going to have a very nice day of it. 70 degrees early tomorrow morning. As we head towards the lunch hour, just like we saw today, temperatures are going to rocket straight on up there into the mid-80s. You won't need the umbrella. Tomorrow's a dry day, a warm day. Daytime temperatures near that record high of 87 degrees. We'll probably top out here in Jacksonville somewhere around 84 or 85 degrees, and then maybe a couple degrees warmer in the hot spots around town. 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon is when we're going to see the hottest temperatures, and as we get into the evening hours, you can see the heat still stays around town up until about 7 o'clock. Forecast for tomorrow, simple. Partly cloudy. Grab the sunglasses, the shorts. If you wear them, flip-flops will be perfect. Very warm temperatures. Scattered shower possible late in the day. And here's that 10-day forecast showing you that on day 7, that's when the temperatures really come on down for us. Until then, the next 3 days are 80s, followed by a cool down on Saturday. Veterans Day still looking pretty great around the area. If going to the parade, we'll watch out for some showers. But look at that early morning temperature right there on Wednesday morning. Pretty remarkable. All right, our coverage continues on the election of 2018. We'll be right back with much more to come.
Welcome back to our continuing election coverage. If you've been waiting for a victory speech or a concession speech, it appears you're going to be waiting a while longer. Let's look in now on Ashley Spicer, who is at the local Republican Party watch party. Are they hanging in there? It's getting late, Ashley.
Tom, it is getting late, and you can tell by the crowd they're still here, but it's definitely less than what it was about an hour ago. But the spirit is still strong. People are really hanging in the best that they can, cheering as the numbers come rolling in. They are looking for what they want, which would be the Republicans to pull out a win here, looking for Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis to pull out those wins. Again, right now, too close to call, but they are hanging in the best they can. About half of the people, though, have gone home. Of course, tomorrow's a work day, so makes sense. It is getting later, but earlier today, Cord Bird, he was here celebrating with his wife and daughter. He has been placed again in District 11, so he spoke with us about the win for him.
We felt really confident going into Election Day. We put in the hard work. We campaigned till the end, so we were confident that we would prevail tonight. I'm a big believer in grassroots, knocking on doors, meeting voters face to face. I still think grassroots wins elections, especially in North Florida. Voters really appreciate it. So I think if you put the hard work in, it pays off on Election Day.
Bird covers part of Nassau County, which is where I live, and he was actually there today. So I saw him doing some of that campaigning, and he thinks that is really what brought it home for him. Again, those grassroots efforts. I'm live, Ashley Spicer, Channel 4, the local station.
Thank you. And we just got word from Tallahassee that Andrew Gillum is 5 minutes away from taking to the stage and speaking to his supporters. We will bring that to you live as soon as it happens. In the meantime, we want to talk to Allison Henning, who's with local Democrats who are in St. Nicholas waiting to hear. Allison.
Yes, the watch party is still going on. It has cleared up quite a bit in the last hour, but there are still a few people here waiting as those nationwide results come in here in Florida. Still a very close call, as we've been hearing all throughout the night tonight. But Democrats staying hopeful tonight. I do want to bring in Daniel Henry. He is with the Democratic Party here in Duval County. Daniel, we were talking about, this race and how you feel pretty proud about Duval County.
We do. I think a lot of times people discount Duval County and Democrats in order to be effective in this county. A lot of times people think that Duval is a red county. But with the results showing right now, we have a 4-point lead in the governor's race for Gillum. We have a 1-point lead for
And here we
Bill
have
Nelson.
Andrew Gillum and R.J. Gillum talking to supporters.
Overwhelming amount of people that outvoted Republicans during this cycle. So
it is quite a treat to see that y'all are still here. On behalf of Chris and Kristen, my wife RJ, our families, we could not be prouder of the way that we ran this race. We couldn't be prouder. We could not be more thankful for the support that was shown by each and every one of you all the way along this path. We recognize that, we didn't win it tonight. We didn't win this transaction. But I want y'all to know that is just it, a transaction. That what we believe in still holds true today. I gotta tell you, As I stand here on the highest of 7 hills in Tallahassee, Florida, the campus that gave so much to me and to my wife, RJ. Many a days for those students who were around when we were here as students, we marched plenty of times from this very set up to the Capitol. We let our voices be heard. We didn't shrink from the challenges. We didn't shrink from power. We spoke truth to power. And just because we didn't always come out victorious, we didn't retreat. We stood up. We stood strong. We spoke out because we recognized that we had power too. Earlier this evening, I called Mr. Ron DeSantis and congratulated him on what we expect will be him as the next governor of the great state of Florida. But I want you to know that in spite of our congratulating him on his victory this evening, nothing that we believe in is compromised. I still believe that we ought to pay teachers what they're worth. I still believe that. I still believe that we ought to clean up our environment, our air, our water quality, our beaches, our shores. I still believe that we ought to have the kind of economy where people are able to work one job instead of 2 and 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. I'm extremely proud that this evening, the voters of the state of Florida decided to pass Amendment 4. Proud about that. That is just one step closer to getting us where it is that we need to be as a state. Y'all, I want to encourage you not to give up. I want to encourage you to stick to the fight. I want you to know that every step of this way, even though I won't have the blessing of serving as the next governor of the state of Florida, I still plan to be on the front lines right alongside every single one of you when it comes to standing up for what it is that we believe in. As I said all along the campaign trail, power sees nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We still have to be willing to show up every single day and demand our seat at the table. We got to be willing, inside of elections and outside of elections, to say that our voices still matter, that we still have relevance. I still believe and I still trust the voters. We may not have all shown up in the way that we thought and hoped that we would, but I still believe that there are still more of us who believe in what is common and what is decent and what is right. And I believe in the long run, good always wins out over evil. I still believe that. Many of you all along the trail heard me talk rather repeatedly about my grandmother. Someone pointed out that she was the real winner of the governor's race. My grandmother, who poured so much into us, because my mother and father, as I would often share, would have to get up so early in the morning and go off to work. They would load us up in the car and take us over to my grandmama's house where we would sleep just a little bit longer. And my grandmother would often have a ritual. It was a 2-step ritual. The first phase of that is that she'd grab her bottle of olive oil, sometimes cooking oil, whatever the shiniest oil was that she can get her hands on. And she would build a cross across my forehead. It was her way of sending us out into the day with a blessing that no harm would come our way.